The Elder Scrolls Online 2025 Global Reveal livestream is coming up, and in anticipation of what they're going to announce, I just wanted to share some of my thoughts and make a few predictions about what I think will be announced. We already have some idea of what to expect from the game director's end-of-year 2024 letter to the player base, and we've seen some of those points already addressed in Q1 of 2025, such as serial performance and a graphical update to some of the base game zones. But the real framework of ESO's future will be announced during the Global Reveal livestream on April 10th. I've seen some speculation about what this presentation is going to reveal, and I'll touch on that later in the video, but I also want to share my concerns and make a few educated guesses as to what we might see regarding the future of the Elder Scrolls Online. First of all, let's start out with what we already know based on the official comments from the ESO team, specifically from that end-of-year letter I mentioned. The biggest change to the game is that we're going to be moving from a chapter launch every year to a seasonal content model. This seems like a smart move if they're trying to be more flexible with content updates to happen more often instead of holding off and cramming everything into one big release every June. Then for the rest of the year, they can only focus on things that wouldn't be considered expansion-worthy features. For example, a new system like scribing that was introduced in the Gold Road chapter won't have to be tied to the launch of that new chapter. The new zone and main story could be one piece of content, then the scribing quests and system could be another bit of content sometime later. There's usually nothing super inherent that links these systems to the location of specific chapters, so going forward they're free to fit it in where and when it makes the most sense, instead of having to kind of shoehorn it into whatever the most recent chapter setting ends up being. I think taking the same amount of content we already get each year and just spreading it out into seasons is the most likely way this new content model is going to work. Doing content this way will help to address the retention problem ESO faces, where we see a big surge of players right at a chapter launch, a ton of people come back and blast their way through the latest content and then drop the game until the next major update. When population spikes and drops like this happen, it's difficult to build lasting communities in the game, and ultimately, more than any content, the best way to keep people playing an MMO long term is for them to find a group of friends in the game, in my opinion at least. That being said, you also don't want to fall into a habit of time-gating content, so it's definitely a fine line that they'll have to walk. The big worry, of course, with moving away from a chapter model into a seasonal model is that we will never get large chapter size updates again, just small seasonal content until the game eventually dies. This is a point I've seen again and again from all the dead game commenters, but under that mountain of salt they live on, they do have somewhat of a point. ZeniMax Online has been developing another project, presumably an MMO, codenamed Project Kestrel since about 2018. We know little to nothing about this project yet, but if it's another MMO, it's not outside the realm of possibility that the attention would eventually shift from ESO to this new project. I'd be a little bit more concerned that this is the case if ESO wasn't such a financial success for the company, but we'll just have to see. I don't think the game is at the winding down or managed decline stage quite yet. In fact, I think we're far from it, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't find these excerpts from the game director's letter concerning. 2025 will be a mix of old and new as we move the dev team towards creating smaller bite-sized pieces of content. We will still have some larger items that we've been working on for over a year, which you'll see launch as well. With the changes to our content release model, please be assured that we are not abandoning new quest content, but we will do it in different ways than we previously have, as our focus will not be on adding giant new landmasses, although we will do this from time to time. Instead, we will use existing zones and areas to tell new stories. So it does seem like there's some truth to the idea that we won't be getting expansion-size updates anymore going forward, but I wouldn't start catastrophizing quite yet. Until we hear more from the devs, as far as we know, they could be going back to DLC-sized updates like the Dark Brotherhood, Thieves Guild, Clockwork City, which were all smaller content, but smaller doesn't always mean bad, and he directly states that they will still do giant new landmasses from time to time. I mean, come on, look at how much of Skyrim is still left to come out. There's no way they aren't going to do something big involving Whiterun and hopefully Winterhold. That would be leaving easy money on the table, and isn't Skyrim's 15th anniversary coming up next year? Kinda makes you think, doesn't it? The other thing we know based on the letter is that they're working on the new and returning player experience. Specifically, they've mentioned some changes such as returning to the original Wailing Prison tutorial area, not overwhelming new players with prologue quest or chapter quest compass pins, and visually improving the oldest zones that aren't quite up to the standard of the latest zones. This effort will be important when it comes to the long-term health of the game, and it'll just be nice if ZOS can figure out how to ease some of the early game friction when it comes to things like crafting research or mount training. Like, maybe the more time you spend riding your mount will double or triple the speed of the training timer, so you advance your mount more quickly if you use it more. Either way, it seems like the devs are already aware of how overwhelming it can be for new or returning players, so as long as they're focusing on that, I'm sure we'll see more improvements announced as they come. So I think we're moving in a good direction as far as that goes. So now on to predictions. What do I think the future of ESO looks like? I think we're going to see a battle pass of some kind where you pay up front for all the content coming during the season, and it'll be either free or discounted for ESO Plus subscribers depending on how many cosmetics, mounts, pets, etc. are included. I think for 2025, we won't see another zone added, but I think we will have a story that goes across the existing zones. Maybe a continuation or follow-up to the Mages or Fighters Guild stories from the base game, or something along those lines. And I think they will finally introduce some kind of a difficulty scale for overland content. They've brought it up in the past, and I'm going to predict that they've figured out some kind of difficulty toggle or slider that will allow players to opt into more difficult world content. If not everything in the overland world, at least the option for harder delve and public dungeon difficulty, with plans to include the open world content in the future. I think those are all pretty safe bets based on everything we know so far, but I do have a few more predictions that are kind of out there, so I don't think it's super likely that any of these will happen, but regardless, here they are. I think that they need to revisit the subject of merging Xbox, PC, and PlayStation mega servers. I know they've said they've looked into doing this over the years and that the technical difficulties are in the way, but I just think it's such a mistake to have the player base split across 3 different platforms, especially when other games in direct competition with ESO are able to do it. Speaking of consoles, I think it's possible we'll get some more news regarding add-on support for consoles in this presentation. I don't think it was mentioned in the game director's letter, but it was definitely mentioned in one of the recent ESO live streams as something that's in the pipeline, so I think people would be really hyped for any news on that. And this last one is definitely a stretch, but I think there's actually a chance that ESO's base game could be going free to play instead of the buy to play model it is right now. The base game already goes on sale for like $5 several times a year, it's included in Game Pass so it feels free to any Game Pass subscriber, and it just seems like a smart move to get more people in the door, especially if they tune up the new player experience. I was hesitant to include this as a prediction, but I figured I'd throw it in there so I can look smart on the off chance it does happen. That's pretty much it for my thoughts going into the ESO Direct announcement. I really hope that what they have in store for us is going to be good, but since this is a transitional year, my expectations are honestly quite low. I'm definitely more interested in learning about the new content release schedule than I am for whatever they have planned for the rest of 2025, so who knows, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. The biggest hint we've gotten content-wise actually comes from a new loading screen and this year's Anniversary Jubilee cake. Both things show this weird bone structure along with what looks like necromantic magic, so whatever the story they have planned for this year probably has something to do with necromancy. Maybe it's the return of Mana Marco. After all, we know he's still around in the late 3rd era because we officially kill him in Oblivion, so it would be fair game for us to kick his ass again in ESO. Anyway, that's all I've got for you in this video. Let me know in the comments what your predictions or wishes are for the announcement on April 10th. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and until next time, see ya!